Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to tackle a question that you probably think you know the answer to. What is money? I mean, sure, it's in your pocket, it's in your bank account, but what is it really? Well, the answer is a whole lot more complex and way more interesting than you might expect.
See, the thing is, you can't just jump to a simple one-sentence definition. To really get it, we need to build a solid foundation with a few key economic ideas first.
So here's our roadmap. To truly understand money, we've got to cover all these steps. For this explainer, we're going to focus on building that essential groundwork by really mastering these first three concepts. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the most basic building block of any market, the commodity. Then we'll look at how simple trades turn into bustling markets. And finally, we'll uncover the core idea of value that makes the whole thing tick. Right, let's jump in with that very first piece of the puzzle, the commodity. So what in the world is a commodity? Well, it's not just any old object. The key thing, its defining feature, is that it's made for the market. Its whole purpose is to be sold or exchanged, not necessarily to be used by the person who made it. And this is where things get really interesting, this distinction between use value and exchange value. Think about your house. It has use value to you because, you live in it, but it also has exchange value because someone else would be willing to buy it. For a commodity, that exchange value is everything. You could have a screw maker with 1,000,000 screws. They have zero personal use for them, right? But those screws have a huge exchange value because a ton of other people really need them.
So that's the bottom line. An item only truly becomes a commodity if somebody else out there finds it useful and is willing to trade something for it. Its value comes from how useful it is to other people.
Awesome. So now that we know a commodity is something valued for exchange, the next logical question is, how does that exchange actually happen? At a specific price. Where does that number even come from? To figure this out, let's just strip everything away. Let's go back to the simplest possible scenario. Forget about a crowded, noisy market for a minute. Just picture one buyer, one seller, and one single trade. Okay, so let's say Agent 1 has something, we'll call it commodity N, but what they really want is commodity M. They've decided M is so useful to them, they're willing to give up a maximum of 100 units of N to get it. That's their walkaway point. Meanwhile, Agent 2 has M and wants N, and for them, they're not going to sell for anything less than 90 units of N.
So we've got our boundaries, right? The buyer won't go a penny over 100, and the seller won't take a penny less than 90. So where does the price actually land to make this deal happen?
It has to be somewhere in that zone, between 90 and 100. Any price in that range, 91, 95, 99, it's a win for both of them. Agent 1 gets what they want for less than their max, and Agent 2 sells for more than their minimum. It's a mutually beneficial trade. Everyone's happy. Okay, so a one-on-one trade makes sense. But what happens when we go from just two people to a real competitive market? Lots of buyers, lots of sellers, all trying to get the best deal. Let's dig into this with a classic economic example. We're going to take a trip to a hypothetical horse market, an idea made famous by the economist Eugen von Bohm-Bawerk. Imagine this. You have a bunch of buyers, and each one has a different maximum price they're willing to pay for a horse. And you have a bunch of sellers, each with a different minimum price they're willing to accept. And this table lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got the buyers, all ranked by the most they're willing to pay, from £30 on down. And on the right, you've got the sellers, ranked by the lowest price they'll accept, starting at just £10. So, how does this whole market settle on a single price? Well, let's just test one out. What if we said the price for a horse is £21? Who's in, who's out? At £21, you can see that every buyer from A1 all the way down to A6 is thinking, yep, that's a good deal. So you've got 6 willing buyers. But now look at the sellers. Only sellers B1 through B5 are willing to part with their horse for that price. So what do we have? We have 6 buyers, all chasing just 5 horses. Demand is higher than supply. And you know what that means. The price is going to get pushed up. Okay, so the price has to go up. What if it gets nudged just a little bit higher to £21 and 10? What happens to our market now? At this new price, the whole situation flips. Buyer A6, whose max was exactly 21, is now out, so we're down to 5 buyers. But on the seller side, seller B6, whose minimum was 21.10, is now in the game. So suddenly, you've got 6 willing sellers,
but only 5 buyers. Now there's a surplus of horses. There are too many sellers, and that's going to push the price back down.
And boom, there it is. The market finds its balance, its equilibrium price, somewhere in that tiny little window between 21 and 21.10 pounds. Because in that zone, you have exactly 5 buyers who are willing to pay the price, and you have exactly 5 sellers who are willing to accept it. Supply perfectly matches demand. That's how a market price is born. This horse market example is so great because it doesn't just show us how a price gets set. It leads us right to our final and maybe most important concept for today, fundamental value. And this is so crucial because before something can ever hope to become money, we first have to understand how anything gets its value in the first place. So what all this really shows is that fundamental value isn't some magical, abstract number floating out there. No, it's determined by the people right on the edge of making a deal, the marginal participants, as economists call them. In our horse market, that's buyer A5, the last guy willing to buy, and seller B5, the last person willing to sell. Their valuations basically set the boundaries that contain the final price. And this right here is the big takeaway. Price isn't just a random number. It's the point where supply and demand meet. And that point is determined by the fundamental values of whatever's being traded. It's where the value to the very last buyer willing to buy meets the value for the very last seller willing to sell. That intersection is what sets the price for everybody in the market. So we've built our foundation. We get that a commodity is valued for exchange and that its price is set by its fundamental value. But what makes some things easier to trade than others? What's that special property that allows an asset to be exchanged so easily, so frequently, that it can eventually become money itself? Well, the answer is liquidity. And that is exactly what we are going to dive into in our next explainer. Thanks for joining us.